Life has a way of leading people down unexpected paths, sometimes reuniting them when they least expect it. This is a powerful story of redemption, lost friendships, and new beginnings. Imagine walking through a bustling city, lost in thought, when you suddenly recognize someone from your past. Someone who once had endless potential, but is now a shadow of who they used to be. That's exactly what happened when two old classmates met by chance after decades apart. One had built a life of success, while the other had been worn down by hardship. But what followed was not just a reunion, it was a journey of understanding, healing, and second chances. Stay with us until the end to see how their story unfolds. And if you enjoy these inspiring stories, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications for more heartfelt tales of resilience and hope. It was a cool, gray afternoon in Chicago, the kind where the city hummed with distant conversations and the steady rush of passing cars. Donald Trump walked slowly along a bridge, his mind lost in thought, when something made him stop. Near the railing stood a woman, her tangled hair blowing in the wind, her threadbare jacket barely shielding her from the cold. There was something familiar about her, something that stirred a memory from long ago. As he stepped closer, recognition struck him. Emily Carter, a name from his past, a classmate who had once been full of promise, known for her kindness and sharp mind. But now time had worn her down. Her face, lined with hardship, held a quiet sorrow. Donald hesitated, then spoke gently. "Emily?" At the sound of his voice, she lifted her eyes to meet his. For a moment, surprise flickered across her face, but it was quickly replaced by something deeper: sadness, resignation. And in that moment, Donald knew that this was no ordinary meeting. Emily took a deep breath, her voice soft but steady as she began to share her story. She spoke of a time when life was full of promise, when she was a bright student with endless dreams ahead of her. In school, she had been determined, always pushing herself to achieve more, believing that hard work would lead to a future filled with success and purpose. That drive led her to the military, where she found discipline, camaraderie, and a sense of belonging. Wearing the uniform had given her pride. She had served her country with honor, believing she was making a difference. But when she returned home, reality was far harsher than she had imagined. The transition to civilian life was not easy. The support she had expected was nowhere to be found. Opportunities slipped through her fingers, and the sense of purpose she once had began to fade. And then came the ultimate betrayal. Her husband, Robert, the man she had trusted to stand by her side, abandoned her. He chose another woman, another life, leaving Emily to pick up the shattered pieces of what they had built together. With no family to turn to and little financial security, she found herself spiraling downward. Chicago became her refuge, but not by choice. She wandered its streets, searching for shelter, for stability, for anything that could help her rebuild. But the city was indifferent, offering only cold nights and memories of what once was. As she spoke, Donald listened intently, absorbing every word. He had always believed in control, in shaping one's own destiny. But Emily's story showed him how unpredictable life could be. He saw in her the remnants of a woman who had once been strong, who had given so much, yet had been left with nothing. And in that moment, he knew he couldn't just walk away. Donald felt a deep sense of admiration for Emily, not for the hardships she had endured, but for the strength she still carried despite them. Life had stripped away so much, yet she remained standing, even if just barely. He knew he couldn't change the past, but perhaps he could help shape a better future. With quiet resolve, he looked at her and said, "Emily, you don't have to do this alone. Let me help." His words were met with hesitation, as if she wasn't sure whether to trust them. But after a moment, she nodded. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. Together, they set out to retrace the steps that had led her here, not just to understand her struggles, but to find a way forward. They revisited old memories, the bright days of youth when dreams felt within reach, the pride of her service, the love she had once believed would last forever. But they also faced the painful moments, the ones she had tried to bury, the loneliness, the betrayal, the slow unraveling of everything she had worked for. Healing, they both realized, was not just about moving forward. It was about facing the past with honesty and courage. As they talked, Donald reflected on his own life. He had always believed in success, in pushing forward without looking back. But Emily's story showed him something different. That sometimes, true strength comes from confronting what we've lost, from acknowledging our scars instead of hiding them. Redemption, he realized, was not a single act. It was a journey, one that required patience, understanding, and above all, the willingness to take the first step. And in that moment, both he and Emily understood. They were at the beginning of something new. A few weeks later, Emily and Donald found themselves on a quiet road in Indiana, standing outside a modest home. This was the moment Emily had avoided for years, the moment she would finally face the man who had once promised her a future, only to abandon her when she needed him most. Donald stood beside her, offering silent support as she took a deep breath and knocked on the door. When Robert opened it, his face froze in shock. Time had changed him too, his hair grayer, his posture heavier, as if the weight of past choices had settled into his bones. For a moment, there was only silence between them, the kind that held 1,000 unspoken words. Then, in a voice that carried both guilt and hesitation, Robert said, "Emily, I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Inside, they sat across from each other, years of pain and regret filling the space between them. Emily spoke first, not with anger, but with a quiet strength. She told him about the struggles she had faced after he left, the loneliness, the fight to survive, the nights she spent wondering why she wasn't enough. Robert listened, his eyes heavy with regret. He admitted that he had made a mistake, that he had been selfish, and that not a day had passed without thinking about what he had done. Hearing his apology didn't erase the scars, but it brought something Emily hadn't expected: closure. For so long, she had carried the burden of his betrayal, believing it defined her worth. But now, as she looked at the man who had once broken her, she realized something had shifted. His regret was his own to bear, and she no longer had to carry it for him. As they left Indiana, Emily felt lighter, as if the past had loosened its grip just a little. Healing wouldn't happen overnight, but for the first time in years, she believed it was possible. And that was enough to take the next step. Back in Chicago, Donald and Emily decided it was time to reconnect with the past in a different way. Not through pain, but through memories of who they once were. With quiet determination, they organized a small school reunion at a modest community center. They reached out to old classmates, inviting them to come together, not just to relive the past, but to reflect on how far life had taken them all. On the night of the gathering, the room was filled with familiar faces, laughter, and the warmth of shared history. People exchanged stories about their youthful ambitions, the dreams they once had, and the unexpected paths life had taken them on. Emily, standing among them, felt something she hadn't in years: a sense of belonging. When it was her turn to speak, she didn't shy away from the truth. She shared her journey, from the bright-eyed student with endless possibilities, to the soldier who had served with pride, and finally, to the woman who had faced hardship she never could have imagined. But through it all, she had learned something valuable. Strength wasn't about never falling, it was about finding the courage to stand back up. She spoke of forgiveness, not just for others, but for herself, and how resilience was not about forgetting the past, but learning to carry it differently. Then, to everyone's surprise, Robert stepped forward. His voice was unsteady, but his words were sincere. He apologized to Emily in front of the people who had known them both since they were young. "I hurt you," he admitted, "and I can't change that. But I hope, in some way, I can give you the peace you deserve." For Emily, those words weren't magic. They didn't erase what had happened. But they did something just as important. They freed her. As she looked around the room, surrounded by friends who had once been part of her brightest days, she realized she no longer had to carry the weight of her past alone. She had found something even more valuable than closure. She had found a way forward. As the evening wound down, Emily and Donald stepped outside, the cool Chicago air wrapping around them. The city lights flickered in the distance, and for the first time in years, Emily felt something she thought she had lost: hope. She turned to Donald, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking about what's next," she said. "I don't just want to move on. I want to give back. There are so many people out there, veterans like me, young people struggling to find their way, who need support, a place where they belong." Donald listened intently, seeing the fire in her eyes. "A support center," she continued. "Somewhere people can come when they feel lost. A place that offers guidance, community, and a second chance." She spoke with certainty, as if this idea had been forming inside her for years, just waiting for the right moment to surface. Without hesitation, Donald nodded. "Then let's make it happen," he said. "You've spent too long carrying this weight alone. It's time to build something new, not just for yourself, but for others who need it." Together, they began sketching out the vision: a space where veterans could find resources to rebuild their lives, where young people struggling with hardship could find mentors and support. It wouldn't be easy, but that didn't matter. Emily had found her purpose again, and Donald was ready to help her see it through. For both of them, this was more than just a project. It was proof that even after the darkest moments, there was always a way forward. The past had shaped them, but it wouldn't define them. And as they stood beneath the city skyline, they knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than themselves. Emily's journey is a testament to the power of resilience and forgiveness. Life's hardships don't define us. What we do with them does. Through pain, betrayal, and loss, she found the strength to turn her struggles into purpose, proving that healing isn't about erasing the past, but using it to build a better future. Donald and Emily's story is a reminder that every step toward healing makes the future brighter. If this story inspired you, hit the like button and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories that touch the heart and celebrate the power of redemption.